Let's come back to the leptin piece, make sure we all understand that. Let's first talk about, in a normal, healthy body, how that works, and then how insulin blocks leptin and how that works in the brain for somebody that's insulin resistant.
So this is actually work I did. I'm published in this quite a while ago. So there's this hormone, leptin. We discovered leptin in 1994. Okay. And what leptin does is it's a signal from the fat cell to the brain. Hey, I have enough energy on board. I don't need to eat so much. I can also engage in expensive metabolic processes like puberty, pregnancy. Okay. No leptin, no puberty. No leptin, no pregnancy. Leptin's a permissive factor for using energy for expensive stuff that costs energy, because the leptin's telling the brain, I got it. Don't worry. I got your back. All right. Now, leptin deficiency, therefore, is read by the brain as starvation. But these people aren't starving. They're fat. Why do they keep gaining weight? If leptin tells your brain you have enough, why doesn't it stop you? It should, but it's not. Something's broken with the negative feedback. The servo mechanism's not working because the leptin's not telling the brain what's going on. That's called leptin resistance. So there's leptin deficiency, there's leptin resistance. Ultimately, the brain sees the same thing, not enough leptin. But leptin deficiency is a total of 14 people in the world. Leptin resistance is about 4 billion people. 14 people, 4 billion people. Which do you think you have? All right? 14 people, we can give them shots of leptin, and we're replacing the leptin that's missing. And that basically fixes the problem. But if you have leptin resistance, giving extra leptin is not going to do anything because you already got enough. It's just not working. You think it's going to work better from a bottle than it will be from your bloodstream? Forget about it. You got to fix the leptin resistance. So what causes the leptin resistance? And this is the research that I've done. We showed that insulin blocks leptin signaling in the brain. Insulin blocks leptin signaling. So the higher your insulin goes, the less well your brain sees leptin. Now, that is the cut in the servo mechanism. That's what basically turns a negative feedback into a positive feedback, that insulin blocks leptin. Now, here's the question of the ages. Why would God do that to us? What's in it for him, for this to have occurred as a standard phenomenon that only seems to create disease? That insulin should block leptin. And the answer is, we think, evolutionarily, thinking like God now. Okay. There are actually 2 times in your life when you actually have to gain weight. And they are puberty and pregnancy. If you don't gain weight during puberty, species dies out. If you don't gain weight during pregnancy, species dies out. So if your leptin worked right all the time, you could never gain the weight. And the species would die out. So doesn't it make sense that the same hormone that's driving the weight gain peripherally should be the same hormone that's blocking the leptin signaling to keep you eating centrally? That they would be yoked together so that insulin can tell the body and the brain, store and keep eating. Because if insulin didn't block that, then you'd store and you'd stop because the leptin would go up and that would reduce your food intake. And so you would never gain the weight. You would be the 97-pound weakling on the beach, never being able to bulk up, and therefore never being able to actually reproduce either. So insulin blocking leptin actually makes perfect evolutionary sense. And the reason is because we're only supposed to be insulin resistant during puberty, which, by the way, is a normal part of puberty, insulin resistance, and also during pregnancy. And insulin resistance is a normal part of pregnancy. The problem is we're insulin resistant 24/7, 365, not just during puberty and pregnancy. And why are we insulin resistant? Because our mitochondria are screwed. And why are mitochondria screwed? For all the reasons we've already discussed. The fructose, the alcohol, the branched chain amino acids, all the extra calories.
The good news in all this, all roads lead back to insulin. And it's a very straightforward process to bring that back down. You've already mentioned it.
That's not fair. It is not straightforward. If it was straightforward, it would be easy. It is not easy.
Okay, I'm not saying it's easy, but I do believe it's straightforward when people have the right information. We got to lower the sugars, get rid of them, and get rid of processed foods.
Ultra-processed food's the bad guy.
I also want to talk about some of these foods that are in a gray area, especially for people that are metabolically unhealthy, like fruit. But the obvious first step is the two we started with there. Get rid of those, bring the blood glucose down, bring the insulin down, regain your leptin signaling, and prevent chronic disease and the conditions associated with the elevated blood sugar, like small vessel disease. So it all leads back to this, I'm going to call it a simple strategy, but people don't have the right information unless they're tuning into something like this.
Well, indeed, the bottom line is if you think a calorie is a calorie, you're screwed. It's that simple, because then you're just going to monitor calories. You're not going to be monitoring your carbohydrate. You're not going to be monitoring your fructose. You're going to say, well, carbohydrate and fructose, they're 4 calories per gram. Fat is 9 calories per gram. Therefore, if I'm trying to eat less calories, I should eat more carbohydrates and fructose and less fat. Wrong. But that's what we did for, basically 60 years. Is exactly that. And things only got worse. And that's why they got worse. Because we basically induced mitochondrial dysfunction. By the way, you know what mitochondria are made of?
Bacteria, ancient bacteria.
Well, ancient bacteria, but what are they made of?
Fat?
Fat. That's right. They are fat. Okay. Mitochondria are fat. Okay. When you take mitochondria and you do a chemical analysis on, what the structural components of mitochondria, it's fatty acids. Okay. So the lower the fat that you're eating, the less well your mitochondria would work. Actually cause the insulin resistance. So, we got this all backwards in the, 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, all the way up. And the reason is because we thought fat was the bad guy. Turns out fat is not the bad guy. Trans fats are the bad guy. No argument there. And trans fats were everywhere. And they just called those fat. Trans fats are basically poison. Okay, trans fats are not even metabolizable because you can't break the trans double bond. So you can't even turn them into energy. So, this concept of calories is useless. It's essentially garbage because calories come from bomb calorimeters. That's the measurements. We are not bomb calorimeters. Our mitochondria are not bomb calorimeters. They, depends on, what they're made of, depends on what comes in, depends on whether AMP kinase is activated or not, depends on, a whole bunch of things that have nothing to do with calories, but have to do with the, arbiters of metabolic health. And, all those previous investigators, in the past basically ignored all of that and basically led us down a primrose path to destruction. So insulin is the monitor. It's the arbiter of whether you've got a problem or not. Because when your insulin's low, that means your mitochondria are working, because you don't need to divert energy away from the mitochondria, because they can take what's coming in. The funnel is flowing. But when your insulin goes up, that means your mitochondria can't take it. So what do you need to do? You need to take the load off. Well, what's the load? Refined carbohydrate and sugar.
Insulin's the new calorie. Instead of bringing our calories down, let's bring insulin down.
That's what I've been saying for the last 18 years.
Oh, I guess I can't trademark that then.
No, afraid not. I can't even trademark it. But that's been my shtick, for a long time now, is get the insulin down any way you can. And it works, if you can do it. But you have to understand what causes it in order to be able to do it.
If you enjoyed that clip, you're going to want to head over here and catch a full episode. I'll see you over there.
Insulin is the bad guy. I can't say it any simpler than that. Yes, glucose is bad too. I'm not saying it's not. Insulin's worse. Insulin is associated with all of the